Hey guys, this is K.A.R. Gaming, and today we're going to be taking a look at all the purple drift spots in Mario Kart 8.
So, let's get started.
One thing to note is that all these drifts can be done with a standard kart, wheels, and glider combo. So let's head on into our first race. Our first purple drift can actually be done on the second turn of the race. It's kind of risky, but worth the extra boost. The next one for this track is at the top of the anti-gravity section. You should be able to make this as long as you start the drift early enough. Moving on to our next race, we have a purple drift at the very beginning. Just make sure that you turn wide enough and you should be good. The next and probably most obvious one is on the loop-de-loop. It doesn't take much skill to reach purple drift here. And lastly, if you have enough nerve, you can barely squeeze in a purple drift before the finish line. Next up is Sweet Sweet Canyon, and I couldn't find that many places to purple drift. Aside from the purple drift after the cannon, I made an attempt to purple drift near the end of the race, and it's not really worth it. The reason I say this is because it puts you at risk of hitting your kart against the wall. Next up is Thwomp Ruins, and our first one is in this cave near the beginning. Also make sure to leave enough space to mini turbo out of the drift. The last one for this track is right before the glider section. Now it's time to dive into Flower Cup, and this first track is pretty fun. This track has 4 purple drifts, here, 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 and here. These are all on the major turns of the track, so they shouldn't be too hard to miss. There is a purple drift at the beginning of Toad Harbor, but it's a bit sketchy. If executed poorly, then you'll slam your kart against the side of the wall. From now on, I'll call these risky drifts. You can also purple drift in the middle of the race, and at this part near the trolleys. For Twisted Mansion, I could only find 1 purple drift, and that was at the end of the race. For Shy Guy Falls, we have 2 drifts. One right here, and a risky drift at this U-turn area. Moving on to Star Cup, and our next race is Sunshine Airport. If you start your drift early enough and hold it while you go off this ledge, you should be able to reach purple drift. And this purple drift should be a no-brainer. The first one in Dolphin Shoals isn't a risky drift, but you do get uncomfortably close to the wall. Also this one right before the glider section. Next up is one of my favorite races, Electrodrome, and it has 2 purple drifts back to back. The first one before the anti-gravity section, and the next one right here. There's also a purple drift on the green path and the pink path, so it doesn't really matter which one you pick. And lastly, if you hold your drift over the ramp, then you can make one last purple drift before the finish line. Mount Wario isn't all that exciting. In fact, it's just disappointing. I tried to purple drift in multiple spots, but I couldn't find any that could work. Our next race is Cloud Top Cruise, and if you hold your drift while you go off this ramp, you can make it to purple drift. Bone Dry Dunes has a total of 3 purple drifts. The first one is right here, and the second one is right after this jump. Just make sure on the second one you hold far enough to the left so that you don't get eaten by this piranha plant. And then you should be able to purple drift onto this anti-gravity section. The last one for this race is literally right before the finish line. Our next race is Bowser's Castle, and the first one is a risky drift. This next one, depending on when you start your drift, you may or may not have to hold it over the edge to make it. The last one is at the end of the race, and just make sure to watch out for that boulder and you should be good. Rainbow Road is next, with 2 pretty obvious drifts. There's one at the first turn of the race and the last turn of the race. Yoshi Circuit has 2 purple drifts. I wouldn't say the first one is risky, but watch out for this wall. This one's on the tail end of the race, if you know what I mean. And again, make sure you start your drift early enough so you have time to mini turbo out of it. Excitebike Arena has 2 pretty simple purple drifts, and they're both at either side of the track. Dragon Driftway has 3 purple drifts, and for the first one, drift early and turn tight. The second one, you want to carry out your drift as long as possible by turning wide, and the last one is intimidating, but it's possible. Finishing off Egg Cup, we have Mute City. The first drift is kinda useless because you're already going super fast, and the last one is on this turn. Heading into Crossing Cup, starting off with my least favorite race, it's Baby Park. And it should be no surprise that you can purple drift on either side of the track. Cheeseland has a purple drift at this big turn, and a risky drift near the end of the race. Wild Woods features a risky drift right before the glider section. For the last purple drift, make sure to hold your drift over the ramp. For the Animal Crossing track, drift to the left side of this tree in order to make it to purple drift. And for this one, start your drift early. Our next one is Moo Moo Meadows, and for this one, turn really wide. And once again, for this one, start your drift early. Mario Circuit only has 1 purple drift, and it's at this U-turn on the anti-gravity section. Cheep Cheep Beach has 2 purple drifts, and the first one is near this set of item boxes. And the last one is near the end of the race. Now it's time for my second least favorite track, it's Toad's Turnpike. For this race, the purple drifts aren't consistent for each lap, so whenever there's an area with not that many cars, take advantage of that and purple drift. Bone Dry Dunes has 3 purple drifts, and the first one is at this turn near the beginning. The second one is by the sinkhole, and the third one is before the oasis. Next up we have Donut Plains 3, and the first drift is pretty easy. The next drift is a risky drift, and so is the last one. Next up is Royal Raceway. There's actually 2 purple drifts back to back here. After you finish the first drift, immediately turn to the right to do the second one. The last one is on the ramp to the glider section. Our next race is DK Jungle for the 3DS. I could only find 1 purple drift, and it was around this golden banana. Wario Stadium is next, and despite my best efforts, I could not find a purple drift anywhere. That is, without hitting a wall. Sherbertland is home to a total of 2 purple drifts. The first one can be done if you hold your drift off of this ramp. For the second one, be prepared to turn really tight. Our next track is Music Park. The first purple drift is on this piano. The next one is on the marimba, and the one after is on the vibraphone. You'll actually have to press the brakes mid-turn to be able to make the purple drift. And the last one is right before you hit the glider section. Yoshi Valley is next with 5 purple drifts. The first one is pretty easy and can be done on this turn. If we branch off to the far right, we can do one before the cannon. We can also do one coming out of this tunnel. Another one right here, and our last one just before the finish line. Heading into Lightning Cup with Tick-Tock Clock, where we only have 1 purple drift. This one's kind of a risky drift because of how early and wide you have to make your turn. Piranha Plant Slide is up next and it has 1 risky drift. Grumble Volcano also only has 1 purple drift. Ending off Lightning Cup, we have Rainbow Road with 4 purple drifts. The first at the beginning of the race, the second on the loop-de-loop, the third right before the final lap, and the last one right here. Wario's Gold Mine has a risky drift right before you enter the mine. There's also one if you hold your drift over the finish line. Rainbow Road for the SNES has 3 purple drifts, all of which are back to back. Be careful on the third one because it's a risky drift. Ice Ice Outpost has 2 purple drifts. For the first one, you have to track jump from the green path to the yellow path in order to make it. And the second one is right before the glider section. Hyrule Circuit has 2 purple drifts, 1 before the glider section and 1 inside the castle. Heading into our final 4 races, we have Neo Bowser's Hoodie. There's a purple drift right before you hit the tunnel and right before the glider section. Next up is Ribbon Road with 2 purple drifts, the first one being on the first turn of the race, and the second one right before the ramp. Our second to last race, Super Bell Subway, has 3 purple drifts, 1 before this flight of stairs, 1 near the middle of the race, and 1 right before the end. Ending off, we have Big Blue with 5 purple drifts. The first purple drift is on this big turn, and for the second one, drift all the way to the right, and then track hop in order to make it to purple drift. It's also possible to squeeze into purple drifts during this water section. There's one where you're completely upside down, and for the last one, you gotta swing extremely wide in order to make it. Thank you guys for watching, I really hope this helped, and I'll see you guys in the next video.